Afternoon. Welcome. This is a joint meeting between the City Commission and Planning and Zoning Commission. Because of the weather, KLJ representatives that had intended to be here are not here, but they're available by telephone. We're going to have our planner, Ed Creton, explain the process of what we're going to do here in the next hour. And once he's done explaining, then we'll commence. So, Mr. Creton.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have a joint meeting today as part of the adoption of the final version of the comprehensive plan. Back in November, the Planning Commission and City Commission heard the draft comprehensive plan. Since then, we have incorporated, the comprehensive plan has incorporated public comments, comments from staff and from officials, and that's what we are discussing today. The meeting will be two parts. The first part of the meeting, we will have Craig Kubas from KLJ give a summary of the changes and where we're at on it. From there, we'll take public comments, and after public comments, we'll turn it over to Earl Aberson, the chairman of the Planning Commission, to move forward with a motion. The Planning Commission needs to move forward with a motion or a recommendation for approval. That will be a resolution. And then afterwards, the meeting can be concluded. The City Council's formal motion for adoption will happen later at the regularly scheduled City Council meeting that starts at 4:30. But the public testimony will be part of this, the first hour or the first 30 minutes, however long the public testimony will be. Then we'll just adjourn after a motion from the Planning Commission until the regular meeting starts, and it'll be one of the items for tonight's meeting or for deliberations for tonight. Mr. President?
Thank you, Mr. Creton. Before we invite Mr. Kubas to the podium, I'm curious, how many of you intend to make public comment? I want to try and manage the time here. Is there anybody in the audience that intends to make public comment? Okay. All right. Well, that doesn't preclude you from changing your mind, but I just wanted to know. Mr. Kubas, then we'll let you take us through the changes to the document.
Thank you, Mr. President and Commission and Planning and Zoning Commission. I'd just like to start by saying thanks to everyone. This is kind of the beginning of the end of our public involvement process, and it started out, we had 5 public input meetings, which we had really great attendance. I think we picked good venues to have those at. The BAC was really a nice venue to hold a lot of those public input meetings, where we had our open house and our workshop set up with the public input side and the formal presentation on the other side. So this is kind of the wrap up to our public involvement process for the project, which was extensive. Again, this is the summary that the commissions have received of the changes we've made to the draft that came out in November of last year. I'm going to just briefly run through the executive summary. Again, we have Bob Shannon on the phone with KLJ if there's detailed questions to ask of Mr. Shannon. But just going through the changes we had made to the comprehensive plan, we had simplified our capital improvement plan into 3 planning periods, 2013-14, 15 and 16, and then 17 and beyond. We tried to prioritize those projects in meetings with the city last month for the first 2 planning periods in 13 and 14, 15 and 16. And after that, as we talked about through the process, it needs to be a dynamic planning process. So we weren't pretending to be able to look into the crystal ball and know what we were going to do in 2020. We knew we had some projects identified that need to be happened. We do need to revisit that and in later years to reprioritize those projects. Again, there's the cost for the capital improvements throughout the planning period. Another task that we had been going through since the draft of the plan was submitted was to refine the water model, which really helped in turn refine our water projects that we have prioritized for the next 4 years. There's also numerous revisions to policies included in this final draft. And there was a concern raised about the total employment numbers at the end of the study period, 2035, being less than they are today. And so some clarification was made that that number out in 2035, that employment number, is going to be primarily permanent employment, whereas today we have a pretty heavy mix of temporary employment. And NDSU's population projection was based on the permanent employment numbers. So there's some more clarification in the report on that as well. We did include some more profiles on some of the amenities that Dickinson would have to offer, specifically the Museum Center, the the Theodore Roosevelt Center, the Ukrainian Cultural Institute, DSU, the city band, the public library, things like that, to really paint a broader picture of what Dickinson has to offer. That's in chapters 8 and 9. And then all of the maps had been updated to reflect the new city limits that were formally adopted recently. That's been kind of a tiger chasing its tail there, because as we know, there's been a lot of planned development and growth since the project started, and so we've been continually revising those maps, and some revisions have been made since the draft report as well. The future land use map was also updated with input from the city staff. In regards to the transportation plan there, we did have some comments from the Federal Highway Administration and the DOT to meet the needs of those two regulatory agencies. And then again, we revised that map as well, the future functional classification map. You should all have a handout of that. We'd revise some of those, what we'll consider collectors and arterial roads. Some of the phasing of the transportation projects has also been revised based on meetings with the city. And with that, that's a quick summary of where we're at with the final draft of the comprehensive plan. If you have any questions, I'd be willing to take those. Again, we do have KLJ representatives that had been working more in detail on the plan on the phone as well to help answer questions. So, thank you.
Mr. Kubas, I have a comment, and that is there's been several developments with the diesel topping plant. One that MDU has made the commitment to go ahead with it. They've got their air permit. The city is working with the city of South Hart possibly to treat their waste, and I just want to make sure that in the comprehensive plan that project is prominently mentioned. It may already be in there, but since these were some later breaking developments, I would hope that we'd have that in the plan.
We'll make sure that those types of significant projects are mentioned in here. Again, the urban service area had been expanded several times throughout the project to include projects like that and growth like that.
And I know the city is going to be involved in that, so in the next couple of years, that's going to take a lot of our attention. Also, in terms of transportation at the airport, we've had announcements from both United and Delta Airlines, and I would hope that those announcements would be summarized and be included in the plan.
And both of those new announcements, I think, are mentioned in here about the flights to Minneapolis and the new airline service to Denver.
I have some other comments. On the handout that I have, it's called page 10 of page 46. And there's a new policy in there, and this is regarding the downtown. It says that the city should consider dedicating a percentage of the 30% of the 1% sales tax towards these downtown improvements. I'm personally against dedicating any sales tax money. I would offer language saying that the city should consider using a portion of that money, but I mean, we've worked hard in the last few years to get out of dedicating a fixed amount of sales tax to any organization. So I would personally, I'm not in favor of using that kind of language. What is a super majority vote of the city commission, Mr. Colling? I'm assuming that's a vote of 4?
Correct, that would be a 4/5 vote.
I guess there were 2 or 3 instances where I saw that certain approvals should require a super majority vote of the city commission. Is that a state law, or is that the city staff's recommendation?
Mr. President, I can answer that. That was a recommendation from me. Normally when you have your comprehensive plan in places that I've been in the past, this is your long-term document, and it's one that, you know, you want to have a high bar on changing things, because this is your 20-year, in essence, strategic plan. So when you're talking about doing major changes to adding in areas or significant changes to the comp plan, instead of it being a majority, you normally will have a super majority to have a higher bar. That just makes it so it's a higher bar in order to change things, because this is your long-term document that you want to have. As a commission, if you feel that a simple majority is fine, we could revise that language, but that was from my recommendation.
I guess I'd be interested in hearing comments from both members of planning and zoning and city commission on what you think of the super majority idea. Anybody care?
Well, I think we need to care. But I wonder if it wouldn't be good to back up here a little bit and couch the whole issue of these policy recommendations, and maybe at the same time, I know our resolution tonight makes it clear what happens in the first year of our adoption of the comprehensive plan, and whether Mr. Colling would do that or Mr. Croton. But we've got a lot of policy statements in here that I don't expect any of us have scrutinized to the nth degree. Can you comment on that, Ed?
Well, to answer your question, Commissioner Jackson, I mean, as a commission, this is going to be ultimately your document, and I want it to have an ownership, you know, that you feel comfortable with. The policies are ones that, you know, the document, you have the text form, which, you know, for every chapter, then you come down to the end where you have a vision statement and the objective and the policies. I want you to feel comfortable with that, because those are going to be how you should make decisions with respect to land use and to various financial decisions that affect the city. So if you're not comfortable with that, then I would recommend that we hold off on at least the second vote on it. You know, you may decide to say, okay, today we could recommend for adoption of the first reading, but the second reading, I want you to feel comfortable with that issue. And if you're not, then, you know, there's no rush that has to happen with respect to this comp plan. So I would prefer that you feel very comfortable with those policies, because those policies are ones that, you know, this is an advisory document. There's few portions that are emphatic, that are mandatory, that you need to do. That being said, those policies are to be used as part of decision making. So if you feel that way, Commissioner Jackson, then I would recommend either we take in public testimony and we continue it, or those issues need to be resolved before the second reading.
Well, I guess the point I was trying to make is I can't imagine we won't be finding some things that we want to fine-tune in the document. And I think we recognize that with the one-year thing that we have in the resolution, but I think it also goes to the mayor's comments about the supermajority.
Yes, when we were crafting the adoption ordinance, I spoke to Matt, and there was 3 areas that I wanted to give everybody in the community and then also the commission to feel comfortable with our plan, that we could amend it just like we do any zoning ordinance, a rezone. We could amend it in the first year anytime we want to. Then after that, it would be amended twice yearly, because then you've had that time to feel comfortable with your document. You don't want your long-term document to be amended all the time. So the first year, the residential densities, consistency with the future land use map and rezonings, and let me see, the other one escapes me at this point, or revisions to the comp plan could be done we pushed it off a year. So to address your issue, we could come back and modify it on a monthly basis if necessary, that we find certain things as a commission, you do not agree with. It's your plan, it's a community plan, and we can make those changes throughout the year.
What is your concern with the supermajority, just moving forward?
I guess philosophically, I'm opposed to supermajorities because it essentially means the minority rules. And I don't think it has worked very good across our country in individual state legislatures, for example. And I didn't know when I read this if there was a statutory requirement by the state of North Dakota, or if this was something that, again, came from our city staff. But I think I would be more comfortable myself if it was just a majority of, the commission rather than the supermajority, because it essentially would mean that two people could kind of make these determinations, then they'd be a minority.
Mr. President, that was my concern exactly. In fact, I was going to bring it up before you asked you the question, but in essence, it is giving them a minority of two a lot of power over what a simple majority of three, and it can stop some good projects. Otherwise, that three commissioners see well. So I would be favoring the simple majority also.
I think you have to look that this plan is, through 2035. There's going to be a lot of commission and mayor changes between now and 2035. And if you go with the supermajority, I would say as a team, we're pretty much on the same page, and if we see a project coming through and it has merit, the supermajority probably doesn't impact our decision so much. But, in 2014, we have 2 commission positions coming up for re-election. And as you move forward with this plan and the dynamics change, it could get really difficult to stay on task if you have a supermajority vote required to move forward with anything. So I would agree with that. The dynamics of the commission are going to change over and over, yet we want the plan that we're mapping out to stay pretty true over the next 20 plus years. And that's hard to do when a minority can change the whole course of the plan.
On the other side of that, if the change or the issue, whatever the change is an absolute good change, and yet you have 2 guys that don't understand it or disagree with it, again, the majority, cannot vote to approve a good change. So, the people who elect us here, and the majority usually makes the decisions. In fact, they do. And so, again, I know what Mr. Katana is saying by, a supermajority and not wanting to change it's something we started. But change is inevitable. And I mean, in 3 years, 2 years, a year and a half, we got 2 leaving. 2 years or 3 years, we got 3 of us leave. It could be a whole new board in less than 4 years. Okay, they might need a simple majority to make some changes, and I hate to take that away from a majority of a
From
board.
a future board. Yeah. And we'd be crazy to think that we have absolutely everything ironed out today. So this is it going forward, and nothing needs to happen. So I guess I would err on the side of letting future commissions have the same authority that we've enjoyed as we've moved forward with our planning process. I think that would be in their best interest moving forward, that they'd enjoy that same continuity that we've had.
So would we have general agreement to take out all references to supermajorities? Do we? How about on the planning and zoning side? Mr. Abramson?
We made comment on this at a planning meeting maybe a month and a half, 2 months ago, about the document itself, and that we thought the document itself was to be done very thorough, and that we made comment about the favorability of the city commission, the county commission, and the zoning commission support that this document would be put in place. And we said there's going to be changes. We don't know who's going to be on the commissions down the road, but right now it's very favorable to put through a good document. And I think that's the crux of it, is if the document itself is extremely valuable and it's authenticated, then the future commissions will deal with it that way, that they will use it as a valuable tool, and there probably is no reason to have a supermajority. I've always been a supporter of the consensus, the majority consensus of the commissions I've been on, the different boards I've been on, and I feel that I trust the wisdom of the elected officials that they shouldn't have that imposed upon them either.
Okay. Anybody disagree with your chairman over there? No, I didn't think so. That would be pretty dangerous, wouldn't it? Yeah. Well, I'd be okay if it was the mayor's veto. I mean, I could live with that. But. So let's wherever a supermajority is mentioned, let's take that out. And then I have 3 or 4 more items I'd like to comment on. I've noticed, and I don't think I caught all these, but I saw some areas, and for example, on page 26 of 46, it says water model needs to be updated yearly, and then it goes on and completes the sentence. I have a question for Mr. Colling. This is a legal document, isn't it? And if someone decides to file a suit against the city, if they review our comprehensive plan and find that we have violated our own plan, we're going to have a issue in litigation, I would assume.
That's correct, Mr. President. It is a legally binding document, and it is or becomes one of the sort of organic documents of the city. Places where it references shall or must within that document are going to be obligations of the city that the city is going to have to comply with.
Yeah.
Much of the material in the comprehensive plan is advisory or guidance related, and in those cases, it's going to be up to the city commission to basically interpret or apply what the document means. But those places where it says shall or must in the document are obligations that the city will have to comply with.
Right, and so when we say that it needs to be updated yearly, if we don't do it yearly, then I think we have some exposure, and I would, I understand that there are very real needs that, say, when it comes to water or wastewater or population projections, they do have to be updated on a regular basis. But I think that's the way I would say it, that it needs to be updated periodically rather than say yearly, because then you leave yourself a little more room if it comes to a contentious situation where maybe you do have litigation. And I found a few areas where it says yearly, and I would substitute a word like periodically for that. Yeah.
Mr. President, for clarification, is that primarily in the infrastructure chapter that you're referring to?
Well, I think I found I know I found at least 2 of them on page 26 and page 27 here, but I'm not going to say I found them all. And as long as I'm on page 27, at the top of the page in paragraph B, it says one option for expanding the water treatment plant includes constructing a 6 million gallon plant in the easterly portion of the city. What I wasn't clear of, are we suggesting that the city construct a water treatment plant, or would we be assuming when we make that statement that we would be encouraging, in that case, that Southwest Water construct that plant?
To answer your question, Mr. President, that would be, a collaborative effort if we chose to do that. But in essence, we are the driving force when it comes to, providing the major infrastructure to accommodate development. That could be a collaborative effort with Southwest Water, but in essence, that would be ultimately the city's responsibility to ensure that, or at least to follow through with that particular policy.
If we constructed our own treatment plant, would we be violating any current agreement with Southwest Water?
Mr. President, I haven't reviewed the agreement with Southwest Water for some time. My recollection of it is that it does not preclude the city at some point in the future from constructing a water treatment plant. But the timeframes in which the city may be able to do that would be governed by that document, and I don't recall those at this time.
Okay. I understand that from an engineering perspective, it might make a lot of sense in terms of water management to have a plant there. But if we're going to write that into the plan, I think we have to be a little clearer, since to this, for the last, 12, 13 years or so, the city has not treated any of its own water. So,
I think the point here is that should a plant be built, regardless of who builds it, that it changes our water system. That's the point that's trying to be made. The other thing I noticed that on both these pages, that these all come under the heading of recommendations. They're recommendations from the firm preparing the report, and I don't know where that leaves us from the standpoint of it being binding on us, because they are just recommendations and technical aspects of these systems.
Commissioner Jackson, a recommendation on there is similar to a should. It's something for us to look at. It as it denotes halfway through that paragraph. It says as an option in addition to that. So that's something that we can consider. Much of the comprehensive plan is to holistically look at the idea, but it's not an emphatic statement of a shall or a mandate that we have to do that. So that one there would be a policy one. Either we follow through or we don't. But it's just something for us to look at as we would normally do in that side anyway. So it's not an obligation that we have to do. I'm sure that Mr. Cullen would agree with that when we're talking about recommending.
I would agree with Mr. Cortana on that our recommendations are advisory or guidance, and it's something that the City Commission, this board, and future City Commissions will have to consider, and you may need to establish some reasonable basis why you would deviate from those recommendations. But the document is not a self-executing document. It is going to require future commissions to take action to enforce it, and city staff to take action to enforce it and apply the recommendations and the policies that are given in it.
well, I think it's something for you to consider. Might be a very good engineering reason why that you would recommend a plant be located there, but I think you have to add some language in there regarding ownership, or recognizing, at least at the present, the city treats none of its own water. It buys treated water from a third party.
Again, I think where this came from is that there was a time that I believe Southwest Water was considering that option. And if I'm not wrong, I believe they've abandoned that thought now. But it's just another sign of the moving target that this whole document is.
Right, and it may make a lot of sense that they reconsider that option.
Sure.
I just, it would be a change in policy that might not only concern our city, but it concerns our third-party provider too. If we're we're not their largest customer, we're one of their largest customers, that if we decided we were going to be treating some or all of our own water, they might want to be party to those discussions. So,
Mr. President, that could be something that, KLJ was the one that, on the water model portion of that, we could have clarification for that before the second reading, or if you prefer, you can have that done before you want to move forward with that. It's your call.
well, I'm okay with, doing it at second reading, provided we have then a full copy that we can read through, so. Then I have another question. What are community land trusts and resident-owned communities? That's on page 31 at the bottom. It says encourage creation of community land trusts and resident-owned communities in the city.
Mr. President, Community Land Trust, if I recall right, Community Land Trusts are where you have another agency that, in essence, buys down the cost of the land. They will have ownership for it before it sells. They have a time, normally 5 or 10 years before somebody could sell that. That reduces, a community land trust, in essence, reduces the cost to somebody purchasing the land. Let's say from $40,000, they may be able to reduce it to $30,000 to make that, or $20,000 to make that land cheaper, so that you could build a house and, in essence, reduce the total cost of the development for that. It's kind of a new concept. They haven't really done it much on the western side. On the eastern side, there are several jurisdictions that have done that, and it's proven itself to be somewhat worthy. Residential-owned community is one that I like, and it's something that I think we should look at. This would be for a mobile home park or a manufactured home park. We've always had problems in the past of, you build it, and then the management of that park, since it's privately owned, private roads, the management is following through with that. What in essence happens here on what they call a rock would be after the manufactured home community or mobile home park is built, all the residents will pull together and, in essence, buy out the original developer, and they will take ownership of it. So instead of having a definitive lot, everybody participates, and based upon that, you would normally feel that since all parties are associated with the upkeep and maintenance of it, that you would have a better park. So the idea behind that is, in essence, everybody is contributing to the homeowners association instead of just the developer on that.
Okay, well, that answers my question. Well, I have another concern. This is on page 32 at the top. It's a policy, and it's one of those shell things that Attorney Coley warned us about. It says the city shall consider establishing adequate public facility policy and regulations to maintain minimum levels of police and fire protection. And I guess what that paragraph means to me is could be something along the lines of that, policy is going to be that we're going to have one licensed officer for every 1,000 people or something like that. And to me, that smacks a little bit of like dedicating a percentage of, say, sales tax money to any organization. And, I think every commission will try to do a good job of having adequate police and fire personnel on staff, but every situation can be different. And I think back to during the oil bust times when the city had a lot of debt to deal with, and it just wasn't capable of probably meeting what others might consider certain minimum standards. And I'm not sure that we need that policy at all in the comprehensive plan. I'm concerned about that. I think others should weigh in and voice their opinions one way or the other. But to me, it's like we're dedicating a certain percentage of our budget to these areas, and they get funded first, and I don't know if that's what you intended by this or not.
Mr. President, I could just talk about the intent of this particular one, and, that could help out with the deliberation on this particular policy. Shall consider is not an emphatic mandatory that you have to do that. All we're saying is that you bring up that topic and you make a decision one way or the other. That's how I would interpret it. That's always been my interpretation of that through the implementation process, that we would look at potentially having, for fire and police, establishing a program for financial contributions of that. And the decision from the commission could be, we don't feel it's timely, it's not for us to do at this point, and you've met that requirement, you've discussed it, and you've decided that it's not something that this commission or another subsequent commission, if they look at it, need to do. But at least you've addressed that topic. Part of the comprehensive plan is to kind of address issues that we need to look at in the subsequent years as we grow, and that's how I look at this particular condition here.
I would argue that every budget period, the commission considers those standards, and it's already an ongoing thing. And
If you change the word shall to may, will that change?
well, I would, Commissioner Steiner, I would just say we considered it now and decided it's not needed, and would take it out. I mean,
I think, though, Mr. Mayor, help me, Mr. Curtin, if I'm not saying this right, but I think the intent long-term is to give us a tool that will help us involve developers financially in pursuing a certain level of service, whether it be fire, police, water, sewer, or anything else. I think that's ultimately the concept here, is it not? That we have something on record that gives us the tool to bring developers into this discussion and the action that may have to be taken to fund, whether it's fire service or water, sewer, or anything else. So I think reading it with that context, I don't have so much problem with leaving it in the comprehensive plan. The word consider is in there, and I think we're going to be talking about this a lot more in the future.
Commissioner Jackson, I would agree with you on that. That's something I didn't mention before. Perfect example would be, Mr. President, commissioners, would be the Sundance Village, where we had a fire station as part of that. We knew that the extended service was going to be far or well beyond our natural boundary, and this is just one of those issues that we could discuss with the developer. It codifies that if you're going beyond a certain area, that, if we're going to approve that, and it's going to significantly reduce our ability to provide that service, either fire, police, then that needs to be offset by the developer. So a perfect example would have been what we developed as part of our development agreement for Sundance Village.
I don't have a problem if it's physical infrastructure, but the way I read this paragraph is that it's not confined to physical infrastructure. That's police and fire services, which I think you could also say are personnel. And I have a problem if we're going to expect developers to kick in cash to fund personnel. Now, I understand if that there could be some special circumstances where you'd have a fire station, but not personnel. And so if this was rewritten to where it's very clear that it's capital type structures and capital investments, physical structures, I wouldn't have a problem with it. But if it's can be read to be interpreted as funding personnel, I don't think that's right. I think I have one more flag, and then I'll be quiet and let others talk. This is under, on page 46, where you've added language about the Theodore Roosevelt Center. It says the City of Dickinson provides a $20,000 subsidy for the symposium with revenues from the occupancy tax. I think I would drop that phrase with revenues from the occupancy tax and just put the period after the word symposium. Page 46. Oh, wait, no, this must be page, the stamp destroyed the page number, must be page 35 of 46. And that would conclude the things I had, and anybody else have comments that they'd like to make about the changes?
Mr. President, I was looking it up. Could I get a clarification with the changes you wanted on that? The last sentence said the City of Dickinson provides a $20,000 subsidy for the symposium. You want us to remove that section?
No, just put a period after symposium and remove the phrase from the occupancy tax. I think that's correct. That's where it comes from, but it doesn't necessarily have to come from there every year. And as long as, you know, it's accurate, we are providing a subsidy.
President Johnson, are we sure we want to keep the 20,000 in there?
You know, if you said currently, or the city in the past has provided that amount, because I don't think we're obligated to provide $20,000 year in and year out. We can provide less, we can provide more. To me, it depends upon how the symposium performs. You know, it's not something they're entitled to.
The statement says the City of Dickinson provides a $20,000 subsidy for the symposium, indicating that it is an ongoing. Not provided as in the past, but provides as in present tense.
Yeah, I wouldn't have trouble changing that, or objection to changing that to indicating that that's what we have done. It's not certainly something we're obligating future commissions to. Yeah. Nor that they're limited to that. I mean, if the symposium becomes, you know, much bigger than what it is today, then certainly, you know, future commissions may want to provide an even greater contribution. Anybody else have comments? Is there anybody from the public that's changed their mind that would like to comment on the comprehensive plan? Mr. Kubas?
I was just hoping for some clarification from the commission on a couple notes I had made. On the treatment plant, well, I think Commissioner Jackson's right that was an option that was looked at by Southwest Water. Do we want a comment in there stating that currently the city does buy their water, their treated water from Southwest Water?
Well, I think we should have something like
Okay.
that, I mean, we don't have to wordsmith it now, but I mean, I think we want, I think you want to be clear, if indeed you are proposing that the city gets into the water treatment business again, then be clear about that. If that's what you're not proposing, be clear about that. I mean, I can understand, again, where from an engineering perspective, that might make a lot of sense to put a plant over there. And if that's the case, then we should be talking to Southwest Water about that. And,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Okay, and then on the resident-owned communities, should we work with Planner Corton and get some language in there so everyone's comfortable with what those are?
What do you guys think? Do you want that? I'd forgotten what that meant, and you just
Mr.
wanna-
Mayor, you had brought that up, and I had kind of talked about it, and you thought that I would clarify it. We do have language in the text, in the land use
There-
provision,
okay.
that talks about the
Is it-
resident.
Could be elsewhere in the plan, yeah.
yes, we refer to that as part of the text in the land use
Okay.
chapter, so.
Okay, that's all I had. Thanks.
Okay.
Mr. President.
Anybody else? Mr. Jackson?
You know, I have a general comment, and I think I'd like to make it at this meeting when both boards are here, but we've been working on this now for, what, a year and a half, I think? Something like that. A lot of people have done a lot of good work. Our own staff, I think, has done a lot of good work. The public has given us a lot of input, a lot of recommendations as we've gone along. I think the consultant has done a good job on this. There's a lot in here. There's a lot of good material in here. There's a lot of detail in here. You know, we're acknowledging that it's going to change by saying that we can do that as much as we want the first year. It's going to change, and I'm not talking about mistakes even. I'm just talking about our community changing. It's going to change. There's no question about it. But here's the point I want to make. When we started this, we knew that the key to most of this was population, a population projection. We had NDSU do that, and you know, there were some stops and starts with that, and a lot of different opinions, and I think we landed on a number of about 42,000 people, or something like that. I think that's fine, and I think it's fine that the document was written with a 42,000 population number in mind. I think it's good that we now know what we have to do for water and for sewer and for streets and a lot of other things for that population of 42,000. Now we're going to approve this. We move on to implementing it and making more of the decisions that we've been making while we've been preparing this comprehensive plan. But I think that every decision we make shouldn't be made based on 42,000. We have a document now that tells us what we'd have to do if we have 42,000. Maybe we'll have 50, maybe we'll only have 32. And I think it's still up to the two boards to be continually asking ourselves as we make decisions about a new subdivision, or as we make decisions about putting $10 million worth of sewer in the ground, what population do we really think we're going to be? I don't think that this takes that decision making away from any of us as we move forward. We still have to ask ourselves that question. So I wanted to make that point today. The rest of you may not agree with me. I know that going forward, that's what I'm going to do, is continually ask myself if the decision we make really fits the population that we think will be.
I think,
With that, I know we have to move forward.
I think that's well said, Commissioner Jackson, and that's the big wild card. Just because NDSU has produced outstanding engineers doesn't mean that they're always right on their population projections, right?
I just have one question too. The shoulds in here, they're just a consideration, right? Okay, they're good shoulds.
I just have a general overall statement as well. You know, I think our roadmap to the future is probably what sets Dickinson apart from other communities, is that we are being proactive, that we do, you know, look towards the future, and we want steady growth. For staff, we definitely want the document to have some teeth. It doesn't do you as staff any good to lay out the plan if we don't intend to follow it. So I respect the fact that you want the roadmap to have some teeth. I also, and it's a delicate dance between the commission and the staff to have the merit of the plan, but also have the flexibility moving forward. And that's probably one of our biggest challenges. As the map has been developed, one of the key terms that keeps coming back to me is that as a community, we also have to decide how much of the growth and how much of the population do we want to take in our community. It's not our responsibility to take 100% of the growth. We have to take on what we can physically, financially, and prudently accept moving forward. And so that is a moving target. I think, as well thought out as the plan is, we want that ultimate flexibility moving forward because the commissions and our needs will be changing. And certainly if we were having this conversation in 1978 during the last oil boom and projections, and if things had been written in concrete, I look back at when some of the commission members and the mayor took over and what a mess we had to dig out from the last time. And certainly we don't want to tie the hands of any of the future commissions without having the flexibility to adapt to a changing environment, whether it ramps up or ramps down. But certainly having a roadmap, I think, sets Dickinson apart from other communities. It gives us a direction, gives us some fiscal responsibility moving forward. We've enjoyed a very sound budget up till this point, and we'd like to, keep our credit rating and keep our finances in order so that we can grow as the community grows.
Thank you, Commissioner Oltmans. That's well spoken also. Anybody else wish to comment?
Mr. President, before you close the meeting, I'd like to recognize the Planning and Zoning Commission here today. It does look like they have a super majority. Not only that, they're doing a super job. I think they get more face time on Channel 19 than we do because they're putting an extraordinary amount of hours in and just an exceptional job. So we really appreciate what you're doing for us.
Well, I think we all agree with you, Commissioner Steiner, and we're about to turn the meeting over to Chairman Abrahamson so they can take whatever action they need to take. And so, Chairman Abrahamson, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. Thank you, Commissioners. I do say we should recognize the members of the Zoning Commission have worked very hard on this and very diligent on it. And their attitude through the whole thing was that if it doesn't make the city better, then don't do it. And basically this document is a tool that will help future commissioners and mayors, have a tool that they can look at and do the right thing, that hopefully there's some good judgment in here and forcing people to address issues, even though many of them are ongoing by different departments already. They're continually looking at their budgets and what they're doing. That this, beside the hard capital expenditures, the pipes that go in the ground and the streets, that this somehow will make Dickinson a better place and a better place to live for the people that are going to be involved in driving down those streets and living in our houses. So I think that the members of this commission, they worked very hard and very diligent, and they put a lot of time in on it, and I think they did a wonderful job. So at this time, is there anyone else on the commission who would like to make a comment? Being none, I would ask for a motion for approval of a resolution for approval of this document. Mr. Kovacs has made a motion to approve. Is there a second? I'll second. Second by Mr. Hanson. Any further discussion? And the addition of the noted changes that were discussed will go on with it prior to the second final approval by the City Commission. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? Resolution approved. Thank you.
Is there any other business, Mr. Abrahamson, for the planning
no
and
other
zoning?
business from the Zoning Commission at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Kessler, Mr. Colling, is there any other business required by the city at this time? Okay, well then, unless there's objection by Chairman Abrahamson, we will adjourn this meeting and we will reconvene let's say we'll reconvene at 4:35 as a city commission. Okay, we'll start 5 minutes late. So we're adjourned.